too. So just moving on from what you were saying there about the horseshoe fishing and David Watson, and you mentioned obviously Terry Lampard. Now we've kind of had a bit of a conflict between ourselves, Eddie, me and you, and we said that was 2008, which I think we're about bang on. So do you want to just elaborate a little bit on that?
Yeah, well, I that was my second trip to Horseshoe, and Terry was the following year going out to Anamore, which is a small little lake in over in Ireland, Roscommon, and it was the one that was producing the 3 and 4 pound rod. Right. That's where Hugh Goff got his record rod from. So all of them, there was Terry Lampard, Pete Drenham, Tim
Norman, yeah,
and Terry Lamps all going out on a holiday, and they were doing an article. It was a 2 double-page spread in Angling Times, if I remember right.
Mm-hmm.
And they all went out, and unfortunately the 3 and 4 pound rod had disappeared from when Hugh Goff got his, and so I told them about where to go and round the back of the little island. What wasn't it? It was and how to make sure that when they were walking the bank, if they were wading and fishing, there's some big boulders have been taken out for housing point of view, and because it left great big
craters.
Yeah, and they were all soft mud.
Right.
And 2 or 3 people got caught, and they were only one little kid was only just rescued in time. He was right up to his chest.
Great.
It was the lady that lived on the foreshore that told me that.
Yeah.
So
can't beat a bit of local information, especially when it comes to anything like that.
Well, that's right. And but as we said, you should have had notices.
Yeah.
But there's so many funny stories that you hear in Ireland, and they have a big organised event on Anamore every year, and the beer was all the beer and the drinks and food were brought down into the lakeside, or lochside, should I say?
Yeah.
In a couple of wheelbarrows, and the next thing we know, these yobs from somewhere or wherever, they were actually sailing across the lake in these bloody wheelie boats, and as they went, so the water came in, and the villagers looked, because they were affronted that their wheelbarrows be stolen, and then they watched these 2 lads scratch his seat like this and have to swim. But then, of course, weeks later, that's what they were there for when I met them, like the year before. And they were out trying to get dredge for these wheelbarrows because they'd sunk. Yeah.
Oh, I don't know.
Things happen in Ireland.
Yes, like you say, you could write the book on it. I'll tell you what, we'll go down to the next question then. Can you tell us when you joined the Tench Fishers and what prompted you to join?
Well, it's strange really, because the chap in the next village to meet this for here where we are was the CEO for Technique.
Yeah.
He was the CEO, and they were putting on the first national competition. And for advertising purposes, they got Ireland, England, Wales, but there's nobody in Scotland. But I belong to the RAF Angling Club, RAF Lucas, and one of their anglers, Paul Roberts, he was actually in the RAF National 1 team, and Technique were their sponsors. So it had gone from RAF Lucas down to Paul, to the boss, and then up to me, because came one night, I got a phone call and it just said, "Are you the tench fisherman?" I said, "Well, I do a bit of tench fishing. Who is it?" And he explained to him, he was Technique, and he'd like me to go down, so he could put it in the advert. He got people from England, Ireland, Scotland, and Wales. And so I said, "Well, if I got a free ticket," I said, "and I can get a ticket for my mate Dave," I said, "who would have to be running me about, because I said I'll be flying down." And so that's how I ended up going down for the first national competition.
And obviously that was at Sywell, wasn't it?
Yes, Sywell. Bob Church had something to do with the running of it, and taking the figures of the tench caught, etc., because he was doing research on it at that time.
Yes.
So I ended up at the end of the peg I drew was right up against the wire mesh of the nature reserve on the left-hand bank.
Yeah, that's going like sort of up on the west arm, I suppose. Anybody who knows it.
Yeah, I didn't know it then. I know if I looked out from the parapets, I had to go down. I had to walk down the left-hand side and right to the end swim.
Mm.
The funny thing about that was, I mean, the lad in my office at work at Moulton Park at Cotton Oxford, he was a member of Northampton, Raunds and Kettering fishing clubs.
Mm-hmm.
And he said to me, just fish it as though you were Mr. Crabtree. Because you took the natural baits, and Paul was, he
Tomo,
was,
yeah.
Tomo, he was like 2 swims up from me on this arm. And there was a bloke called Jason somebody or other.
I don't know.
He worked for one of the tackle companies.
Okay.
One of them, but and when Tom and Owen and I looked at each other, and he got a snowman, right? He got a snowman. It was pink and orange. The top part was orange, and the bottom part, and he ended up winning the competition. And there's the guy telling me I've got a fish like Mr. Crabtree.
Oh well.
They were caught on a rig. Well, it frightened the life out of me because I mean, up here in Scotland we hadn't seen them.
No.
So it was quite strange.
Yeah, oh well, you live and learn. So, if you had to pick one angler who you have fished with, who would you say you have most enjoyed fishing with, and why?
There's been so many.
Mm-hmm.
I put in with Ken Giles. They came up to the competition I ran on the River Tay, the first course fishing competition on the River Tay. It was Ken Giles and the Shakespeare Super Team.
Yes.
And then there was obviously Ricards and Webb, who I met an awful lot over in Ireland, and I got to know Barry quite well just before he died. And there's a host of, Lampy.
Yeah, Terry Lampard.
Scruffy, he said, just call me Scruffy. Yeah, and it ended up, I mean, there's a whole load, mainly because of a disabled angler, doing the disabled angler. Jackie Charlton, I got to know very well with the Jackie Charlton Trout
Yes.
Club. Bob Church, with running the English international team, and I ran the Scottish team. And so, I mean, there's a whole load. But I think the one person that interested more than anything was Ray Webb.
Yeah.
They all said he was nutty, and he did turn strange.
Mm-hmm.
And he had to go in a home for a number of years, or finished his life in a mental home. But he still contacted Rick Barry, and so he had his faculties. And some days he would write 3 letters a day to Barry.
Yeah.
But he was always interesting to talk to. I mean, he's strange, but a great bloke to talk to him. But because he was a telecom, he was a telephone engineer. I think he had 3 or 4 languages.
Yeah.
That's how it wasn't as he presented to people.
Yeah.
It was slightly different.
Yeah, but I've said that they are some of the most interesting characters.
Yes, as I say, there's a host more in my but you could be names dropping all the time, can't you?
Yeah. Okay. Well, we'll move on to the next question then. If you had to pick one water that you could fish for the rest of your days, where would it be? Coosan.
Yeah,
Okay.
Has to be. Though those 9 years on Coosan was. I learned so much about the tench because you were in a boat all the time, and you were literally watching them through 8-foot gin clear water. You were watching what they were doing, and Fred Carter was brilliant with regards to his knowledge. That's why I was always disappointed that the 2 manuscripts that I got from the Sons. That's why I was disappointed that we were never able to put them in book form. But the cost is just too great. And because what's his name died, who was doing our editing and printing at the time.
Yes.
He was going to do it in his spare time, and he had purchase himself the right equipment to do so, but he never had time to do it, you know.
So we've still got those manuscripts, though, haven't we?
Yes.
As such.
Yes.
So there's still something that would be.
Well, I've got them.
You've got them.
Yeah. And the only other person to have them is Bill Brazier, who was the editor and ran the Irish magazine.
Are they typed or are they handwritten, those manuscripts?
No, they're typed.
They're typed.
But on, you know, on very old paper, and so they're hard to read. That's why I got this. That's why I got this magnifying glass to try and read them.
Oh, yeah.
But you know, they're hard. It's difficult. I know Phil's got a set, and he's had a look.
Yeah.
And as he says, he's read through it, and he thinks it'll be very, very hard. I think once, I mean, soon, in a few years' time, I mean, it'll have to be photographed, even if it's virtually.
Yes. Yeah, that needs saving and documenting.
It needs modern machinery to bring it up to readable condition, and then it needs editing. I mean, I've edited it to the extent that there's 100 pages of A4, but they're all been mixed up.
Yeah.
So I had to look at the bottom of the one page to see if it tied into the top of the next page to get them in order, because they're all over the place. Yeah. So I've got them all in, both manuscripts I've got in order. And as I say, Phil's got the one that was printed for the Tench Fishers. The Tench one. Tench one was printed for the Tench Fishers of Fred's report. And then I've got the one, the other one. I mean, you're talking on a £70 pike being caught in a funny way, and between rocks. This carp and this pike had jumped out of the water after a shoulder fish, and he ended up getting wedged between two rocks. It's just unlocked out.
No?
Yeah. Okay. It's Fred and his party that he had out went and collected it, took it to the local vicar or whatever he wants to get it weighed.
Local vicar?
Yeah. Well, he was the only one. I think he owned it. Most likely owned. No, in Ireland, he most likely owned a drink shop for butchers and a greengrocers, all in one shop. And he was probably
the
only one who had a pair of scales, which is more than like the truth. Yeah. Although I've just made it up.
Yeah, only in Ireland. Just going on about Fred Carter, because obviously a lot of people watching this probably wouldn't know who Fred was. If you give us a little bit of background with Fred.
He was a Gloucester man. His life story is very much the same as mine, in the respect that Claire, his wife, was a nurse. She looked after Joyce, Fred's wife, first wife, and Fred was in the grocery trade. She got TB and she was in hospital for quite some time. Claire looked after Joyce, and Joyce died. Fred had got a young boy called Barry, or a young lad Barry, and it had been I'm sure it had been prearranged, because when I read the manuscripts, the dates and the weddings and times when Fred went over to Ireland were so close, they must have known. And that was the same with my dad.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, brother and I, Mum got cancer when we were about 11.
Yeah.
And Dad was a former or manager of Brookbonds. His nurse at Brookbonds was Jenny. And ended up, she married my dad, but she knew that when you think she was only 25 and we were 15 or 14, 15, it's a huge task, bless her.
Yes.
And I can't give enough praise for what she did to my start in life, because I struggled.
Yes.
I mean, my twin brother went through A grade, and at 14 and a half he'd actually got a job with Halls as an assistant, as a trainee draftsman. I hadn't even got a job, and it was through luck. It was through luck that I got a job at Lillywhites. I was only a little odd job boy to start off with, but I graduated. I mean, I had the brains, but being dyslexic, I couldn't put it down.
They were different times then, because obviously it wasn't really like you say. But it's not. it's not sort of diagnosed and
Get to the back of the glass, Tudor. I've just told you that.
yeah.
You know, you get round the back of the head, and, or a bloody lump of chalk or dust rubber chunked at you. And that's what it was like in those days. You know, we're going back a few years now when you think about it.
Absolutely, and I know you speak really fondly about Jen as well, like you say,
Yeah.
your stepmother. So you and Fred, you probably had sort of a parallel sort of.
Well,
upbringing.
I think, as I say, Jen knew about Mum, and I'm sure that's how they got together.
Yes.
And I think it was. It seems to me, because it's so close, that that the actual Jen and Dad's marriage was, well, I won't say pre-arranged, but it was certainly, she was that Mum. I think Mum knew that Jen was going to be looking after us after she died. You know, because we went over in May. She wasn't expected to last May till May, at the end of May, and we came back from Castletown here in Ireland, and she lasted until the August. She fought on until the August before she died. So I was actually back home when she died, and the object of the exercise was to keep me away.
Yes, I can understand that. Like you say, but I guess sometimes out of the tragedy and the adversity, as you say, you inherited all your wonderful stuff.
And this is why I think Claire and I got on so well. Fred's wife Claire, we got on very well. And I mean, I used to help out. I'd take the plates through, and I always work my way under the counter. You know, if there's a bit of cream left, there's an extra bit of this left. It always. Either Helen, the chambermaid, or Claire would give me the little bit extras that were left of it.
Yeah. You're going to say you've still got that tenacity about you.
Well, yeah, but I was a pretty thin little runt when if you look at the picture in the last article I did, I think my arms are only about that big. Yeah, right. I mean, I was only a wee little
waif.
Yeah. It might be good to have a look at the picture. It's unbelievable. I didn't realise I was thin. So thin. It was the age of 15.
Yeah. Anyway, moving on again. We've sort of said I've put as a multi-species angler, but can you tell us about what your other favourite species are? Roach,
because we had the only fishing I had in. I used to do a lot of roach, dace and chub fishing down on the Avon. In fact, we used to wade. John and I always used to wade out at the old mill where one river goes off, and we used to trot that every weekend, like Saturday and Sunday.
Is that Hampshire Avon?
Yeah, Ringwood.
Yeah.
And so I've always fished for and on the Medway, because roach were always a main species to go for. Yeah. And so when I came up here, I mean, the tension up here was good up until 1998, when the full coat wheel was being put in. And because the whole system they went through with a huge great weed cutter, and they cut everything. And what they didn't realise, they were cutting up tench as well.
Right.
When I could go to Auchenstary Bend on the river, Forth and Clyde Canal, and I could perhaps get 11 tench in on Sunday morning, from about 3 o'clock till 10, 11 o'clock.
Yeah.
You can hardly find a tench now, because they literally decimated and killed a lot.
Yeah.
Not a bit of weed left, all jammed up. But you can now get in a boat at Leith Docks and end up going out the other end and bowling on the Clyde.
Yes.
Go right the way through by boat and take in the full coat wheel as a bit of entertainment.
And I guess the roach fishing up here, you'd have had some half decent roach.
We were catching £3 roach on the Tay.
Yeah.
That's how good it was.
Yeah.
I mean, I hate to think how many £100 bags of roach, because it was just holding them out.
Yeah.
But the thing is, you see, what happened was they used to come into the harbour, and the fish meal used to come from Holland, and the fish meal was taken out of the boats at the harbour at Perth, and then they bagged it to send it to garden shops and what have you. And then once the boat had gone or reloaded, if we've had something to take back, they used to have a hose down all the harbour, because it was just dust.
Yes.
And that's when the roach came in, and that's why they got so big. They were living off fish meal.
Really?
Oh. Yeah, always unreal. They used to, you see them Yeah, I mean, there's a couple of lads from Croydon came up, and they were the first poles I'd ever seen. Not poles,
Yeah, roach poles.
Yes, fishing poles. They had a tackle shop in Croydon somewhere, and they both came up with these poles, and they sat next to the little cafe, and they literally hauled them out. You know, it was like automation. Chuck hauled them in. And both of them broke a pole because you were catching your 6 ounce to like a pound and a bit fish, and then all of a sudden you catch a 3 pounder, and they're trying to hold it out, and both of them broke poles whilst they were there, and they must have had £100 of fish each.
Really?
In no time, yeah.
What sort of year would you be looking at when that was?
Right, well, when I first came up, when 68, through the 70s.
Yeah.
And then of course 92 we had the big floods. Perth was underwater by 15 feet, and nobody really knew all the sandbars that they lived off, all the channels they sort of sat in before going, because the day was quite fast. Good fast.
That's a huge, massive,
especially with snow melt. You know, really tanked through Perth, and they just disappeared. I caught my last roach in the harbour on a piece of flake about the size of a golf ball, and it was £2.2. That was the last one I caught.
Fabulous.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we'll have another break there, Dingle.